Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. This is the show where I take a look at every classic Doctor Who story, plus a bunch of Big Finish audio dramas, one episode a day, 7 days a week. And today, on the 20th of September, 2018, we are starting the finale to Season 13, The Seeds of Doom, with Part 1. The Seeds of Doom is notable as it is the second television story written by Robert Banks Stewart, who only debuted at the premiere of the season with Terror of the Zygons. It's also one that sort of does a pastiche of The Thing from Another World, a classic 1950s horror sci-fi film, where we start off in Antarctica. And the model shot is actually really good. They keep it lit well enough. There are points where you can tell that the snow is a little fake, but this is the mid-70s on a low TV budget, so I'm not going to fault the episode too much for slightly fake-looking snow. It's sort of the plot of this episode that really gets you interested. Mainly, we start with this base in Antarctica, and they're excavating a site that in the ice that was on the surface about 20,000 years ago. They find a seed pod of vegetation in a place where really they shouldn't be finding a seed pod. This is the middle of Antarctica. Even at that point, Antarctica was winter. There wasn't any greenage in that area. So how is there a pod? Well, that's the question, isn't it? And they take this pod in, they send stuff to the World Ecology Bureau and to say, okay, we found this pod. Then they notice that it might be growing a little bit, which is already creepy because, they're scientists. They're at least trying to see, hey, what is it? So the doctor gets called in through unit, though we don't see any unit personnel that we know in this first episode. We just see this representative from the World Ecology Bureau, Sir Dunbar, who is a fun enough character. He's a very stiff upper lip. He thinks the doctor is insane because, the doctor acts erratic. He sees photos of the pod and is like, yes, might still be ticking. Don't have them touch it. Keep it on ice. And the doctor takes this whole scenario very, very seriously. And I don't blame him for it. Tom Baker does an amazing job just in that first scene alone. There are these amazing jokes that you really understand the gravity of the situation because, he thinks he basically says, this seed pod is dangerous. This isn't a good thing. You don't want to interfere because this isn't going to end well for you. Like any of you, you are all screwed if you interfere with this pod. So, what they do is they have the doctor basically does, the doctor and Sarah Jane immediately head out to Antarctica, down to the Antarctica, and you think, okay, they're going down to Antarctica, nothing bad's gonna happen. Of course, something bad happens. First off, Dunbar goes to an eccentric plant collector, Mr. Harrison Chase, who is informed that, hey, this pod is the only thing in the world, and it might be able to germinate, which isn't a very good thing, but Dunbar, we're introduced to him thinking, the doctor's a madman, Chase, we may as well just sweep this under the rug. This Chase fellow should be fine if he gets this pod. So he calls these two men, Keeler, who is a botanist, and Scorby, who is a thug, played by John Challis, and who is amazing in the role. He's amazingly hilarious. They're like, yes, I want you to go to Antarctica during a snowstorm and stage that you're breaking down and steal the pod by any means necessary. I don't care how you get it. I just want the pod. And then in Antarctica, before the doctor even arrives, the pod opens up, a tendril springs out, and it attacks this guy. This guy gets attacked, and almost suddenly, he gets a green tint to his skin, and it's slowly revealed that, the man is slowly turning into a plant. Yes, a plant, not like, this isn't just a you're saying mad scientist, I think. No, this guy's turning into a plant, and it's creepy. And, basically, by the time the doctor arrives, the doctor's like, well, you shouldn't have let this happen. The only thing we might be able to do is possibly amputate the arm. So we get this moral debate of, should we amputate this guy's arm? Should we not? He's currently docile, but the doctor knows it's something called a crinoid, which is basically an alien vegetation that tries to eat all animal life where it becomes established. And it's been stuck in the ice. It got caught in the ice, but it's still able to germinate. It got caught in the ice, so it wasn't able to germinate, but now that they let it out, it was able to germinate. The doctor also goes and finds a second pod. So they realize, hey, because we need to get rid of this pod, what's going to happen is we are going to have, we're gonna chop off his arm. The Scorpion Keeler arrive. They start looking for the pod, but they don't. Their plot doesn't go anywhere for this first episode, which is fine. They're just introduced as thugs to the audience, and I guess as comedy side characters. I can't really tell. This guy Winlet, he's become much more plant-like. He comes up, he attacks one of the other guys on the base, killing him, and that's our cliffhanger. And he escapes into the snow. Oddly enough, I haven't even talked about Sarah Jane. She's more there just to provide moral support, I guess. She's going to get more to do later in the story. But in this first episode, we already have a lot going on. So really, you don't need Sarah Jane. So with all that said, I'm going to give The Seeds of Doom Part 1 a perfect 10 out of 10, because it is just this tension-filled episode. I didn't even mention the music is great. It's by Jeffrey Burton, so it has a different sound. This is the guy who did Terror of the Zygons music, I think. He does sort of these clarinet, these very pipey sounds that are interesting, like very low sounds. It's directed by Douglas Camfield, so that's a plus. So yeah, Seeds of Doom Part 1 gets a 10 out of 10. Alright, it is the 24th of September 2018. I apologize for the gaps in these dates. Some stuff in life has come up, so this may not be a day-by-day thing. We may be getting a couple of dates in between, but The Seeds of Doom Part 2, let's get into it. And oh my god, this story is really creepy. Mainly because there's no one in the supporting cast who is completely morally good. Part 1 brought up the idea that one of the vets would have to potentially operate on Winlet because, without it, by cutting off his arm, because without it, the crinoid infection spreads. And of course, we pick up with the crinoid out in the loose. And what's nice is that while the snow is polystyrene, Douglas Camfield actually makes it work really well. He does a good job at shooting it so it looks like actual snow. The music and the sound effects all sort of build the atmosphere that we're actually cold. Even though this is being filmed at a time when it's not actually that cold out, like, they're actually quite warm because they're in these heavy costumes pretending to be in Antarctica, even though it's cold, even though it's warm. Also, you have Robert Baker Stewart continuing to provide a bunch of morally gray characters. You have Dunbar, who is... in the first episode, he told Chase about this pod, which sent Scorpion Keeler up to the Antarctic. I'm going to get to them, because they are delightful, and I love just all the scenes with the Doctor. There's an amazing scene later on that I want to get to, so just hold on to that. But we really get an insight into the character that he's the kind of guy who is just kind of sick of being stepped on by the government. And though he wants his name off of it, off of this whole Chase thing, because he realizes that Chase was going to steal the pod and potentially actually cause some sort of danger. And, they break communication because Scorpion Keeler basically busts up their communication and basically take over the base. I don't want to call it a mutiny. They had the idea that, we just got lost in the Antarctic. Don't ask us how. They send the medical team back, which isn't good because you have Winlet, who is a crinoid, which the Doctor is just pushing this idea that he is no longer human. Stop acting as if he was human to begin with. He is now an alien. Get over it. He will, get over it, or you're going to be killed. Because this is not... We aren't dealing with human beings. We are dealing with an alien from outer space. We can't deal in terms of humanity. Like, he even tells Sarah Jane off, he's like, no, you can't feel for this man. He's lost his humanity. We have to stop him, or else the entire planet is going to go extinct. I think they plan on luring the Crinoid into this generator and then blowing it up. And the big cliffhanger is that they get blown up with it. Now, that's the end of the episode. It's an amazing end. I love the cliffhanger. The explosion looks great. Let's go back to the middle, because I still have a lot of things to talk about. You have this amazing line where the Doctor and Sarah Jane come upon the empty bed. Scorby comes up with them with a gun. And Scorby says, turn around. The Doctor goes in a circle. Facing me. Faces him. All right, talk. The Doctor being the Doctor's like, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart had perfect pitch. Oh, what happened to him? Who Wolfgang? Oh no, him. Oh, he died. And he gives Tom Baker one of his toothy Tom Baker grins, which is like, yes, I am in charge. I am Tom Baker. This is my television show. I can't do a Tom Baker impression to save my life, but that's what we're gonna go with. We get to some really, really dark places in this one. Like, we have espionage, we have Keeler and Scorby stealing the second pod, setting the place to blow up. Like, he even tells Keeler, it's like, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go dig a hole, enough for, say, maybe 5 bodies. They are planning to, he's planning to kill everyone. And it's like, if you don't help me, I'll just make the hole a little deeper. It's a very tense episode. John Challis plays the part amazingly, and you just get scared, like, hey, this guy not only means business, but is, looking essentially to kill everyone. And that's really the episode. Like, and then you have the Crinoid, which is the villain, which is just this mass of vegetation. It's basically an Axon costume painted green, which is what it is. And it looks great, especially in the, Camfield shoots it really, really well. It's a great way to save budget because you already have the costume. And you really feel like that he has lost his humanity. And of course, we're building just to this great cliffhanger where the Doctor and Sarah Jane are cornered by the Crinoid. They can't get out of the generator. It's set to blow up. It blows, and that's the end. It's a really solid conclusion. The episode itself, it sets you up for tension. It does an amazing follow-through job with that. And you feel like you have, a good sense of what, how the episode ends. So I'm going to give The Seeds of Doom Part 2 a 10 out of 10. Alright, it is the 26th of September, 2018, and I just finished watching Part 3 of The Seeds of Doom. And the thing about Part 3 of The Seeds of Doom is that we're actually transitioning to the next real part of the story, because we are... Within minutes, we are out of Antarctica. The Doctor and Sarah Jane survived the explosion. They are picked up by some people from South Bend who ended up getting out there, thinking, hey, it's weird that no one's actually responded after a quote-unquote medical emergency, so we're going to go out there. Realize the base is blown up, so they immediately ship the Doctor and Sarah Jane back to London. You have more of Dunbar being pissed at Chase for essentially committing murder. Like, Chase, he sent the men to basically blow up the base and leave no survivors, which is very dark. Like, this is a really, really dark piece of fiction, and it's great. Like, just, there's, a serious nature to it, that just sort of, that, washes over you as you realize that, hey, the Doctor and Sarah Jane aren't winning in this one. They're the ones that are on the losing end of things because, well, they're the ones who are getting caught in the crossfire, and it ends really with this dark ending of an episode. They aren't the winners this time around. They are the losers, and I really, really like that aspect to this episode. It gives it an edge, like an edge over, I don't want to say its predecessors, but it gives it an edge over just as a story that, like, hey, like with Pyramids of Mars, and Terror of the Zygons, this isn't going to end well for anyone. This is going to end with death and destruction on a massive scale. Don't you realize that? We actually get some. We're building towards this death and destruction and horrific ending. But what's interesting is that this is also a bit of an interlude where we are introduced partially to a comic character. They get back to London, they get into a car from the World Ecology Bureau. The Doctor realizes, at this point he doesn't realize, he doesn't realize that anyone, he doesn't realize who Chase is, that it's Chase that sent Scorby and Keeler. But what he does realize is it must be someone in England and London with connections to the World Ecology Bureau. So, in their car, Chase does the megalomaniac thing and sends someone, essentially, to kill the Doctor and in the car. And, of course, the Doctor and Sarah Jane make it out of it. They use it's Chase's driver. They steal his clothes. And they find a portrait of a flower in a car boot by Amelia Dukas, who is this artist. And Amelia Dukas is a character. She's sort of this character, kind of exclusive to the Tom Baker era. This sort of character type where it's this doddering old smart woman who Tom Baker plays off of. This is really our first example. It'll happen a couple more times. Actually, quite a few more times when we get to audios. But she's just this wonderful character who's like, oh, well, he never paid. It's quite sad. She's sort of in her own little world, and she cracks you up. She keeps you happy, keeps the energy of the episode up, and keeps it from getting too depressing, but she sends them in the right direction. So a lot of this episode, the rest of the episode is pretty much just, we're going to do some chases in Chase's estate, which lets us go off some amazing footage. The Doctor and Sarah Jane get shot at. The Doctor and Sarah Jane, they both try to be nonchalant about it. Until Sarah Jane gets captured, because they split up, and they're like, all right, we need to make sure this pod doesn't germinate. And throughout this time, Chase has had Keeler been injecting the pod with fixed nitrogen so it will germinate. He is trying to get this pod to germinate because he wants to see what the heck it is. He wants to see, is it going to grow? Is it going to be an amazing thing? It's I want to know. I want to save the planet. He's already kind of an insane character. And the big conclusion of Sarah Jane's caption is like, well, I need to know what happens when the crinoid pod touches human flesh. So the big cliffhanger is Sarah Jane, her arm is being held down right next to the pod, and the pod's opening, and we cut. And it's an amazing cliffhanger. Like, it's a very tense cliffhanger. You think, especially because this is the end of a season, Sarah Jane could be leaving, even though obviously she's not. Like, it's going to be resolved in the next episode. But you really believe that. It's like it instills feel like, oh my gosh, this is actually how are they going to get out of this one? It was putting this amazing cap on the end of the episode. So I'm going to give Seeds of Doom Part 3 another 10 out of 10. Alright, it is the 27th of September 2018, and I just finished watching Part 4 of the Seeds of Doom. And Part 4 of the Seeds of Doom is where the story goes from dark to darker. Like, seriously, this story goes to really harsh places. It opens up immediately with the Doctor jumping in through the roof, causing a commotion, getting Sarah Jane away from the plant pod as it spreads out. As it starts to spread out its shoot. Chase asks, well, what do you do for an encore, Doctor? And the Doctor replies rather coyly, I win, while he's holding a gun to Chase's head. Throws the gun, he and Sarah Jane run out. And in the confusion, Keeler, he gets touched by the plant and immediately starts changing into a crinoid. And this episode is the episode where, because, they aren't in the Antarctic anymore and they're in a better climate for the crinoid to exist, Keeler turns into a crooner by the end of the episode, and the end of the episode is Sarah Jane and the Doctor lost in the woods around Chase's house, being approached by this massive plant thing controlled by the crinoid, because Keeler escapes. The Chase thinks, well, let's just tie you up in a cottage, and we can see what happens, because he's, as we said before, totally and completely insane. He has decided that it's fine that he's turning into a plant. Nothing bad's going to happen if we let him continue to turn into a plant. Again, notice a pattern here. Turn into a plant equals good in Chase's mind, which is just makes me ask a lot of questions, because it's like, hey, you sure this guy is sane? No? Okay. And a lot of the episode is, honestly, the Doctor and Sarah Jane are running around. The Doctor gets captured, and he gets put into a composter. And that's a source of tension, is when he is trapped in the composter. Luckily, Sarah Jane gets him out in the nick of time, and no one gets composted, but it's really quite a dark thing. Like, you have just this composter, it's whirring, and everyone is like, could be dying. The Doctor could be dying here, and it's like, yeah, just throw him in the composter. Sure, that's totally sane, and a completely good idea. This isn't gonna go horribly wrong. And you honestly get this fear that, hey, the Doctor could die here because, composter is a thing. Like, and it genuinely sort of gets you. It's like, oh, he might be dead by the end of this. That being said, you have some really fun stuff with the Doctor and Sarah Jane overall. You have the return of Miss Amelia Dukas, who, she comes in. It's like because this episode they established she never got the money for her painting. So she's coming to talk to Chase so she can get the money for her painting, because, I'm sorry, that was an expensive painting. And you have this amazing back and forth. Chase initially doesn't want to see her because it's like, oh, he's busy with his experimentations on Keeler. But, she's a doddering old English lady. You can't really say no to them. I mean, seriously, it's one of those things where she's an amazing character, and I love what they do with her. So they have the back and forth. It's like, 750 guineas, plus inflation. So around 1,000, shall we say. Which is enough, so, she basically talks to Sarah Jane and update Dunbar about the situation. So by the morning, unit is going to arrive by the time they arrive, they will have everything off. So we just build the tension in this episode. So I'm going to give The Seeds of Doom Part 4 another 10 out of 10. Alright, it is the 28th of September 2018, and I just finished watching Part 5 of The Seeds of Doom, and Part 5 of The Seeds of Doom continues to be an amazing just sort of story. This is where, well, I have some things to say, some of them good, some of them bad, but actually, none of them bad, really. All of them really quite good. The episode handles a lot. Episode 5s usually have a problem with, being episodes where the story itself seems to, deal with, a lot of growing pains and things change, because you this is the penultimate episode. It also happens to episode 3 and 4 and 4-parters. But it's that penultimate episode where they have their conclusion, they have their rising action, but there's the gap in the action that they have to get through to get to that conclusion in part 6. And oddly enough, The Seeds of Doom does the getting through the gap really, really well. That's something I will praise Robert Banks Stewart for writing. He keeps the story interesting, and he keeps the ideas flowing. And they're flowing, decently flowing. You can't just stop halfway through and be like, I'm done. because that's where a lot of issues arise in Doctor Who stories. When you take the ideas, you have them flow, but then you just stop them because you're like, nope, that's it. I don't know where I'm going from here, so we're just gonna stop, and we're gonna let some padding happen, because a lot of the episode gets Scorby, Sarah Jane, and the Doctor stuck in a cottage. Chase is slowly going insane, like even more insane than he was, like more visibly mad. Like he makes this case like, oh, human life shouldn't live, and he's just sort of speaking. There are these nuances in the performance where he's just sort of speaking in this monotone, and it's fairly creepy, because you're like, oh, he's actually losing his mind here. He's not. He's gone totally insane. He thinks that human life should, no longer exist. But, a lot of the ideas, Scorby is still trying to just protect himself, while the Doctor and Sarah Jane are trying to protect the human race, because they're like, hey, we've got this giant plant monster on our hands. We can't just, we have to set aside our differences and try to save the world here. We can't just be like, it's fine, nothing bad's gonna happen. We're okay if we just, let everyone die horribly, which is really well done. It's terrifying, and it gives, this sense that, the whole story, the world is just falling apart here. Like, it's really quite sad overall. Like, you don't get the idea of, this is just a temporary thing. The Doctor's at its lowest, and that's, you have the Doctor being ready to sacrifice himself, and they're when they get into the main house, Sarah Jane and Scorby have to start getting plants outside, because, the big cliffhanger is the Krynoid is bigger than the house now. Like, it can, start consuming that way, and that's genuinely a creepy thought. Like, you have this giant plant who has been menacing for the entire episode now being able just to get over the house and basically to kill everyone. And you have what also sort of helps that is that you have the Doctor and Sarah Jane. You have Dunbar and Amelia Ducat. No, Dunbar is dead from the end of the last episode. And you have Sir Colin Thackeray, the head of the World Ecology Bureau, who's calling in unit. And you have there's this amazing moment from Amelia Ducat, who really, she has no purpose anymore. She's served her purpose, and she's done. Now she's just giving commentary on, how inefficient bureaucracy is, which is really fun. It's just, it adds so much flavor to the episode without feeling like padding. It keeps you interested, and you're like, oh, that's funny. We're just doing this random social commentary on how you can never get reach civil servants when you need to. Haha, I'm so funny. And I love it. She's a great character, and she really shines through here. So much so to that, just with her in general, and her contribution to the story, you just add so much to the episode, and the episode just works because of it. So overall, I'm going to give The Seeds of Doom Part 5 another 10 out of 10, because we're wrapping up to a conclusion, and we're a 5th episode that actually, doesn't pad for once. Alright, it is the 29th of September 2018, and I just finished watching Part 6, the final episode of The Seeds of Doom. And for The Seeds of Doom to end on this note is rather interesting, shall we say. As an episode, it ends with, of course, the Doctor winning and a happily ever after, which I think is probably the best way, really, to do the episode. Like, have it, you kind of have to have, it's a good ending, especially after just the very darkness, yet it ends with a pretty high body count. Dunbar's already dead, Keeler's dead, Chase is dead, Scorby is dead without a redemption. That you think Stewart is going for a redemption arc with Scorby, and he doesn't. He doesn't redeem him. Scorby just proves that he's a scared man whose only motivation in life has been murder, essentially, being paid to kill people. If I'm going to be brutally honest, it works. It makes you feel very, very scared, very on edge, very, very nervous, because the character doesn't end up surviving. He ends up dead by the end of it. And his death scene is done off screen, of course, because there is, in fact, a lot of things that go wrong in the story. You have Chase, of course, going insane. The crinoid is bigger than the estate, and it's the only way our heroes win is by blowing it up. They have to blow up the entire house with it, and it's quite sad because the house, it's a historic house, and Chase wasn't entirely a horrible, awful human being. He just had, the insanity of someone who, wants. He was just insanely obsessed with plants. But also you have a lot of the episode is just the Doctor and Sarah Jane simply trying to escape the house before it goes up in smoke. We hear, in the last episode we heard reports of people being strangled by their plants in their gardens, because that's what the crinoid does, is that it takes over and it causes so much pain and suffering and ends up as it's taking over the entire world. And what's really, really amazing about the story in general is that you feel the danger even though you don't see it. Scorby's death is off screen. Sarah Jane gets captured by Chase, tied up, and he's going to be fed. She's going to be fed to the crinoid through the composter. And what's actually quite sad is the Doctor comes in and saves her. He has a fight with Chase, and that's how Chase dies. He in his insanity, they can't get the composter turned off in time, and well, he gets ground into plant food. And it's a really interesting way of doing things, because it doesn't absolve the Doctor of the crime. The Doctor probably could have saved him, and the Doctor tries to save him, to let Chase get out so he can survive, but he doesn't. Chase is just composted into, compost by the end. He ceases to be, and there's no blood, but it's a very brutal scene to watch, because you see the look on the Doctor and Sarah Jane's faces, and the Doctor even mentions it's like, I could have saved him. It's like it would have been me in there, almost having to make an excuse for why Chase died. And it's amazingly done. Tom Baker gives this amazing just sort of sense of fear that, hey, he could have died. And, the big ends up with the unit coming in and having to blow everything up. And what's nice is that we end on a joke that even after all this, the Doctor and Sarah Jane are just going to keep going off and having their adventures. And there's something about that just, it really speaks to you. It leads to a very, very good ending. Also, the direction has been great through the story. The model work of the explosion is probably one of the best explosions we've seen in Doctor Who, because it looks real. Like the model of the house and the explosions, they work together. It looks nice. It looks like they actually, put a little time and effort into getting it right. And you see the plant, carapace, burn up. And luckily, the Doctor says, now but to deal with if there's a crinoid, if the pods ever show up again, and they start to germinate, this is what you do, almost enabling the Earth to be protected against this threat, which kind of helps, because this is the only time the crinoids have been seen on television, at least thus far, and that's a very important aspect of the story, is that this isn't a threat that disappears. It's still there. So all that said, I'm going to give The Seeds of Doom Part 6 a 10 out of 10. That being said, that was the final episode of this story, so we add up the scores and average the Seas of Doom to give it a final score of 10 out of 10. Thank everybody for watching this installment of the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. I do apologize again that it's been so late coming. Hopefully that won't happen in the near future. But please leave a like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. And the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon will return with our first Tom Baker audio drama with Doctor Who and the PESCATONS.